My groom confessed his great love at the altar, then her father walked in. 200 guests were waiting for us to exchange rings when Daniel raised the microphone and confessed that his first time had been with another woman, a woman he still spoke about like a sacred memory. He told me I could leave if I minded. Before I could answer, the ballroom doors flew open. An elderly man pointed his cane at my groom and demanded that he repeat every word. Before we exchange rings, I need to tell you something. Daniel Reed held the microphone so tightly that his knuckles had gone white. 214 guests sat beneath the crystal chandeliers of the Grand Ashford Hotel in downtown Columbus, Ohio. Most of them thought he was about to make some unscripted declaration of love. The room quieted. A few people lifted their phones, ready to capture what they assumed would become the sweetest moment of the wedding. I stood across from him in a white satin gown with a train that brushed the edge of the stage. My bouquet had been assembled before sunrise from cream roses, ranunculus, and eucalyptus. The petals were still cool when I touched them. Daniel looked directly at me. My first time was with Claire Bennett, he said. It was a long time ago, back in college. He spoke in the same even voice he used when explaining a contract to a client. Then he added, I don't want to walk into a marriage while hiding that from you. If it matters to you, you can leave now. For 1 second, I thought I had misunderstood him. The chandelier above us shifted slightly in the air conditioning, scattering light across his face. He did not look away. He was waiting for something from me. Shock, maybe. Tears. A demand for an explanation. Some kind of public proof that his confession had the power he believed it had. I looked down instead. For most of the ceremony, I had been folding a cocktail napkin in my hand without realizing it. I unfolded it carefully and laid it on the silver ring tray beside the 2 velvet boxes. Then I turned toward the guests. That was when the ballroom doors slammed open. An older man stood in the doorway with a dark wooden cane in one hand. His hair was nearly white, and his shoulders were slightly stooped, but nothing about him looked fragile. Behind him stood a woman in a simple black dress. Her face was colorless. The man raised his cane and pointed it at Daniel. Daniel Reed. The way he said the name made the entire room still. I reached up, removed my veil, folded it once, and set it on an empty chair near the stage. Behind me, my bridesmaid Megan was crying hard enough to ruin the makeup she had spent an hour perfecting. I touched her shoulder. Can you get my purse? I asked. I need to fix my lipstick. That was how my wedding ended. Or maybe that was only the part everyone else could see. The day had started 11 hours earlier with the sound of my mother's coffee grinder. My mother, Linda Carter, had a habit she had never admitted was a habit. Whenever something important happened in our family, she woke before dawn and made coffee from whole beans, even though she usually drank the cheap pre-ground kind during the week. She had done it the morning my father left when I was 7. She had done it before my high school entrance exam for the private academy I desperately wanted to attend. She had done it the morning I moved into my first apartment. And on my wedding day, at 5:42 a.m., the grinder roared through the small 2-bedroom condo where I had grown up. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling until the machine stopped. Then I got up. Mom was at the kitchen counter in an old navy robe, pouring coffee into a French press. 3 plates of breakfast tacos waited near the stove. She had filled them with scrambled eggs, roasted potatoes, cheese, and too much cilantro. I overdid the herbs, she said without looking at me. They don't photograph well anyway. Good morning to you too. Morning. I sat down and began picking cilantro leaves from my plate one by one. Megan appeared from the hallway with a toothbrush in her mouth and her hair piled on top of her head. You're getting married in 6 hours and you're still doing that? I held up a green leaf. I have standards. She pulled the toothbrush out. Marriage is compromise, Emily. Daniel knows I hate cilantro. He doesn't make me eat it. Megan made an exaggerated expression of approval. A keeper. My mother turned toward the sink before I could see her face. Megan had slept at our place because she claimed she was worried I would be nervous alone. The truth was that she had been too excited to sleep herself. She had kept me awake until nearly 2 in the morning, going over the schedule, the flowers, the music, the seating chart, and every possible disaster except the one that actually happened. I ate most of the tacos and pushed the rest away. Mom looked at the plate, then at me. She did not tell me to finish. That was how she loved people. Quietly. By noticing what not to say. The makeup artist arrived at 8. Her name was Denise, and she was in her 40s with silver hoops in both ears and the calm hands of someone who had seen hundreds of brides panic over eyeliner. After 10 minutes of working on my foundation, she studied me in the mirror. You might be the calmest bride I've ever had. I smiled. I've been told I have a misleading face. In the mirror, my skin grew smoother, my cheekbones sharper, my eyes brighter. I looked polished. Expensive, even. But I still looked like myself, which had been my only request. Megan spent 15 minutes deciding how low my veil should sit. Higher makes you look regal, she said. Lower makes you look softer. Lower. You sure? I want it over my face until I get to him. Megan pressed a hand to her chest. That's so romantic. I almost laughed. The real reason was less romantic. I did not want 200 people studying my expression before I had a chance to see his. My father arrived a little before 10. Richard Carter had left our family when I was 7 and spent the next 25 years becoming a man I saw on birthdays, major holidays, and occasions that came with formal invitations. He was wearing a charcoal suit that fit him well. His second wife had probably chosen it. He sat in the old wicker chair in the corner of the living room, the same chair he used to read the newspaper in when I was a child. We exchanged 4 words. You made it. I did. Coffee? No, thanks. Megan later said we sounded like 2 diplomats trying not to start a war. Some relationships do not end with a fight. They become so quiet that eventually there is nothing left to say. At 10:30, the wedding party's cars pulled up outside. Daniel stepped from a black SUV in a navy suit, his dark hair brushed back, one hand adjusting his cuff. His college friends came out behind him, already loud. Mark Davis, his old roommate, saw us at the window and shouted, "There she is. Bride of the year." Megan laughed. I did not. Daniel was smiling, but the smile stopped at his mouth. I had been with him for 3 years. I knew the difference between his real smile and the one he used in courtrooms, networking events, and conversations with people he disliked. He looks exhausted, Megan said. Didn't he post something at 3 this morning? I turned from the window. I don't know. It disappeared right away. Then it probably wasn't important. That answer was typical for me. I never checked Daniel's phone. I never asked who was texting. I never looked over his shoulder when a message lit his screen. People assumed that meant I trusted him completely. It did not. It meant I had learned at 7 years old that information could split a house in half. My mother had found out about my father's affair because she refused to stop looking. A receipt in his coat. A number on the phone bill. A woman's name in an email. Every answer produced another question until eventually there were no questions left, only boxes by the front door. After that, I built a strange rule for myself. If you did not go looking, you could postpone the pain. It was not healthy. It was simply effective. At least until my wedding day. The ride to the hotel took longer than expected because of construction near Broad Street. I sat in the back seat with Megan while my mother rode in front. Megan reapplied her lipstick twice. The second time, her hand shook enough that she drew a red line just outside her mouth. "Great," she muttered. "I'm the nervous one." My phone buzzed. "Daniel, you almost here?" "Me, 10 minutes." A second message appeared. "Daniel, I need to tell you something before the ceremony." I stared at it. Then typed, "Okay." My mother did not turn around, but I saw her eyes move toward me in the rearview mirror. When I was 15, my best friend told half our grade that I thought I was better than everyone else. I came home, locked myself in my room, and cried until my face hurt. Mom did not comfort me the way television mothers did. She sat on the edge of my bed and said, "Whatever scares you most, don't hand it control of your face." I had misunderstood her for years. I thought she meant never cry. What she meant was never let another person decide what you became in the moment they hurt you. I was still learning the difference. The Grand Ashford had put our engagement portrait on an easel outside the ballroom. In the photo, Daniel's arm was around my waist and my head rested against his shoulder. We had taken it the previous October in German Village, under yellow leaves and old brick facades. It was a beautiful picture. So beautiful that I had almost forgotten the argument we had after the photographer left. Daniel had taken a phone call that lasted 23 minutes. He walked half a block away to answer it. When he came back, I asked, "Who was that?" "Work." His tone had been flat, dismissive, like I was a stranger asking for directions. That night, he stood alone on the balcony of our rental suite for nearly an hour. I went outside and said dinner was getting cold. He looked at me with an expression I could not place then. Now I knew it. He had been somewhere else. The bridal suite beside the ballroom was small, with one long mirror, a cream couch, and too many bottles of water. Daniel was not there. The coordinator said he had asked for a few minutes alone. Megan came in holding the printed ceremony schedule. "Emily." There was something wrong with her face. "What?" She pointed to a line circled in red pen. "Special message from the groom." "Did you know about this?" "No. The MC says Daniel added it himself this morning." I looked at the line for longer than necessary. Maybe it's a surprise. I reached for a water glass. My fingertips touched the rim and the water trembled. Megan noticed. "Your hand is shaking. The room's cold." She immediately adjusted the thermostat. The room was not cold. Lauren Brooks, my college roommate and maid of honor, appeared in the doorway wearing a champagne-colored dress. "We're ready." 5 minutes. I stood and looked at myself one final time. White dress. Low veil. Soft lipstick. Neutral smile. Megan handed me my bouquet. The ribbon around the stems had loosened. "Wait." I retied it. Not once. 3 times. I pulled the loops until they were even, smoothed the tails, adjusted the knot, and checked it again. Lauren leaned against the doorframe. There are more than 200 people waiting." "I know." I tightened the ribbon one last time. "Okay." The ballroom lights dimmed. My father held out his arm. I took it. The doors opened, and the first notes of the processional filled the room. A spotlight found us. At the far end of the aisle, Daniel stood on the stage. During rehearsal, he had been instructed to walk down and meet me halfway. He did not move. He stood with one hand in his pocket, gripping something inside it. The lights were too bright for me to read his face. But my heart gave one hard, sudden beat. And for the first time that day, I knew I was afraid. The aisle was not long. Maybe 90 feet from the ballroom doors to the stage. It felt longer. My dress was heavier than it had been during fittings. With every step, I had to lift the front slightly so I would not catch my heel in the hem. The spotlight followed me. Guests turned in their chairs, smiling, whispering, holding up phones. I saw my Aunt Carol at the third table from the front. She wore a burgundy dress and an expression I did not understand. It looked like sympathy mixed with curiosity. My mother sat beside her with her back perfectly straight. She had carried herself that way ever since my father left. Whatever happened, Linda Carter sat tall. Stood tall. Walked tall. As if posture itself were a private refusal to be defeated. Daniel still did not come down the aisle. Halfway to him, I realized I was folding something in my left hand. A cocktail napkin. I must have picked it up in the bridal suite. I had folded it into quarters, then eighths, then into a tight little square. Megan knew that habit. I only did it when I was trying to control myself. She walked a few steps behind me and whispered, "Emily." I glanced back. Her mouth opened, then closed. Neither of us said anything. At the front, my father placed my hand in Daniel's. Daniel's palm was wet. That frightened me more than anything else had. His hands were always dry. Even in July, even after a run, even when he was nervous before a major hearing. I used to tease him that he had reptile circulation. He held my hand for less than a second, then released it. He would not meet my eyes. The MC, a polished man in his 40s named Greg, smiled into his microphone and gave the familiar speech about love, partnership, and two lives becoming one. Applause came in polite waves. The string trio shifted into something softer. Then the rings arrived. Lauren stepped forward carrying the tray. Two velvet boxes sat side by side. I reached for Daniel's ring. Daniel put his hand over the tray. Wait. His microphone was still on. The word traveled through every speaker in the room. Greg hesitated for half a beat, then recovered with the reflexes of a man who had survived drunk best men, fainting bridesmaids, and missing rings. Looks like our groom has something special to say. A few of Daniel's college friends cheered. Mark whistled. Daniel lifted the microphone. Before we exchange rings, I need to tell you something. That was when he finally looked at me. I would remember his expression for years afterward. It was not guilt. It was not panic. It was almost relief. He looked like someone who had rehearsed a difficult speech for months and was proud of himself for finally giving it. My first time wasn't with someone I married, he said. It was with someone I cared about deeply in college. Claire Bennett. The room changed. You could feel it before anyone spoke. The warmth went out of the air. Daniel continued. It happened a long time ago. I was there because I wanted to be. I've never regretted it. I don't think a marriage should begin with a lie, and I don't want to pretend my past didn't happen. Greg's smile froze. Someone near the back whispered, "What the hell?" Daniel took a breath. "Emily, I should have told you before today. That's on me. But I need to be honest now. If this changes how you feel, if it's something you can't accept, you can leave." He said the last sentence gently. That almost made it worse. He had turned my wedding into a test of my tolerance and called it honesty. If I stayed, I proved I was mature enough to accept his grand romantic history. If I left, I became the insecure woman who could not handle the fact that her husband had loved someone before her. It was a perfect trap because he had designed both exits himself. For several seconds, no one spoke. 214 people sat so quietly that I heard my aunt inhale sharply. I heard the click of my mother's teacup touching its saucer. I heard Megan crying behind me. Daniel heard none of it. He was watching me. Waiting. I looked down at the napkin in my hand. Slowly, I unfolded it. One crease. Then another. Then another. I placed it beside the rings. I did not cry. I turned toward the room. All right, I said. To everyone who came today. The ballroom doors crashed against the walls. Every head turned. An elderly man stood at the entrance, breathing hard. His cane struck the marble floor once as he stepped inside. Behind him was Claire Bennett. I knew her before anyone said her name. I had never met her, but I had seen enough fragments to recognize her. An old college photograph Daniel once left inside a book. A tagged picture Mark had shown me when he was drunk at a barbecue. A name Daniel murmured during a fever 2 years earlier. Claire. She had always existed at the edge of our relationship like a shadow nobody officially acknowledged. The woman in the doorway looked nothing like the myth Daniel had built around her. She wore a plain black dress and flat shoes. Her brown hair was tied back without care. There was no makeup on her face. She looked exhausted and terrified. The old man pointed his cane at Daniel. Say it again. Daniel went white. Not gradually. Instantly. The blood left his face so quickly that even from several feet away I could see the change. He knew them both. Several of his college friends knew them too. Mark's expression collapsed from confusion into recognition. The older man walked forward. His name, I later learned, was Walter Bennett. He had spent most of his career restoring historic houses and churches around central Ohio. He was old-fashioned, proud, and deeply concerned with reputation. At that moment, however, he was simply a furious father. I asked you a question, Walter said. Did you just use my daughter's name in front of this entire room? Daniel swallowed. Mr. Bennett, Do not call me that like we're having coffee. The cane struck the floor again. You stood on a stage, at your wedding, and publicly talked about having sex with my daughter. Did you ask her permission to tell 200 strangers? Did you ask whether she wanted her private life turned into part of your ceremony? Daniel lowered the microphone. His hand tightened around it, then loosened. Claire stepped toward her father and touched his arm. Dad. Please. Let's go. Go where? Walter snapped. He said your name. People are recording this. By tonight, everyone who knows us will have seen it. Claire flinched. A low murmur spread through the ballroom. Phones that had been raised to film a romantic confession were still recording. Walter stared at Daniel. You call this honesty? You call this love? You humiliate the woman you're supposed to marry, and then you drag my daughter into it without asking her? Daniel finally looked at Claire. I wasn't trying to humiliate anyone. Walter gave a short, disbelieving laugh. Then you're even more selfish than I thought. He took another step. You keep talking about that night like it was some great mutual memory. Claire told me she had been drinking. She told me she barely remembered what happened. She told me she said no, or stop, or that she didn't want things to go further. Daniel went completely still. No one in the room moved. Walter's voice dropped. And you stood here and called it something you both wanted. The words settled over the ballroom with a weight nothing could soften. Daniel's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Walter continued, each word controlled now. If Claire hadn't begged me not to turn her life into an investigation back then, I would have gone to the police. A woman at one of the front tables covered her mouth. Greg, the MC, quietly switched off his microphone. The string players lowered their instruments. For the first time since I had walked into the room, the wedding stopped pretending to be a wedding. Daniel turned to Claire. His voice was barely audible. Claire. That's not what you told me. She had been staring at the carpet. At his words, she lifted her head. The tiredness in her face was worse up close. What did I tell you, Daniel? He blinked. You said it was complicated. You said you didn't want to ruin my life. Claire closed her eyes for a moment. I told you not to make it into something it wasn't. I told you to stop contacting me. I told you for years that I didn't want a relationship with you. Daniel looked as though she had struck him. But you never said dash. I shouldn't have had to build my whole life around finding the perfect sentence that would finally make you listen. Her voice shook, but she did not raise it. I moved away. I stopped answering. I blocked numbers. I ignored birthday messages. I ignored holiday messages. I ignored every apology that somehow turned into a speech about how much you loved me. What else was I supposed to do? There it was. Not a romance. Not a lost love story. A door that had been closed over and over while Daniel stood outside convincing himself that persistence made him noble. Suddenly, details from the last 3 years rearranged themselves in my memory. The phone call during our engagement photo session. The night Daniel stood on the balcony afterward. The old picture in the book. The way Mark once started a story about the girl Daniel never got over and then stopped when Daniel walked into the room. The fact that Daniel had proposed to me 3 months after Claire moved back to Ohio. I had not known that last detail until that moment, but once I saw her standing there, the timeline made emotional sense in a way I hated. I looked at the man I had planned to marry. He had not confessed because he respected me. He had confessed because he wanted an audience for the version of himself he had protected for years. He wanted to walk into marriage while preserving one final monument to Claire. And he expected me to bless it. I reached for my veil. The comb caught slightly in my hair. I loosened it, then pulled the fabric free. The room was so quiet that I could hear the soft movement of tulle against my dress. I folded the veil carefully and placed it on a chair. Megan was crying openly now. Mascara had smudged beneath both eyes. I touched her shoulder. "Can you get my purse?" She stared at me. "What?" "My purse. And my coat, if you can find it. Emily dash. I need to fix my lipstick." Her face crumpled. Later, she told Lauren that those 6 words scared her more than if I had screamed. Maybe because she understood that I was not calm. I was holding myself together one small task at a time. I stepped down from the stage. When I passed Claire, she looked at me. We had never spoken. We did not owe each other anything. Yet I recognized something in her expression immediately. Guilt. Not guilt for what Daniel had done. The guilt people carry when someone else has placed them at the center of a disaster they never asked to cause. I stopped beside Daniel. He turned toward me. "Emily, wait." I raised one hand. He stopped speaking. I leaned close enough that only he could hear me. "You still don't understand what you did wrong," I said. "Do you have any idea how pathetic that is?" His pupils tightened. He looked stunned, almost offended, as though he had expected rage but not contempt. I stepped away. Mark stood as I passed his table. M-. I gave him a small nod and kept walking. The side door closed behind me, cutting off the noise that finally erupted in the ballroom. The hallway outside was empty. Air conditioning hummed through the vents. Somewhere far away, a housekeeping cart rattled over tile. I stood there for several seconds and breathed. Then I started toward the restroom. Lauren came running after me. Her heels snapped against the floor. "Emily." I turned. She had my coat over one arm and my purse in her hand. Her eyes were red, but unlike Megan, she had not cried. Lauren got quieter when she was angry. She shoved the purse gently against my chest. "I called a car. It's coming to the service entrance." "Thank you." She hugged me. It lasted only a few seconds. When she let go, she searched my face. "What did you say to him?" Nothing important. It looked important. I smiled, but I could feel the smile shaking at the edges. I'll tell you later. In the restroom, the overhead lights were brutally white. I stood at the mirror and looked at myself. My makeup was intact. My eyes were dry. My lipstick had worn away slightly on the inside of my lower lip where I had bitten it during Daniel's speech. I opened my purse, took out the muted rose lipstick Megan had insisted I carry, and filled in the missing color. Slowly. Carefully. My hand did not shake. When I finished, I pressed my lips together and put the cap back on. Then I called my mother. She answered on the second ring. Neither of us spoke at first. I could hear voices behind her, people moving around the ballroom, chairs scraping, someone asking what they were supposed to do about dinner service. Mom. Her breathing changed. I'm here. I leaned against the counter. For no logical reason, the first thing I said was, breakfast was good. Silence. Then a tiny sound, like she had inhaled too quickly. Are you coming home tonight? She asked. I looked at the woman in the mirror. Bridal makeup. Perfect hair. No veil. Yeah. I'll make something. Okay. Anything you want? I closed my eyes. No cilantro. My mother's voice broke on a laugh that was almost a sob. No cilantro. I stayed in the restroom another 3 minutes after we hung up. Then I walked out through the hotel service entrance in my wedding dress. A rideshare driver in a gray Honda waited by the curb. He was probably in his 50s. When I opened the back door, he looked at me in the mirror, looked at the dress, then looked forward again with impressive discipline. Where to? He asked. I stared out at the loading dock behind the hotel. People from the wedding had started drifting toward the front entrance. Some were smoking. Some were calling relatives. Some were already laughing in the stunned way people laugh when they have witnessed something they know they will describe for years. Just start driving, I said. The driver glanced at the app. I need a destination eventually. Give me a minute. He nodded and pulled away. As the hotel disappeared behind us, my phone began to ring. Daniel. I let it ring until it stopped. Then it rang again. On the third call, I answered. Emily Dash. I hung up. Then I turned the phone off. Outside, Columbus moved past the window in ordinary pieces. Traffic lights. Brick storefronts. A woman pushing a stroller. A man carrying 2 iced coffees. A city bus stopping at the curb. The driver turned the radio down without asking. A weather report said rain would move in after dark. I rested my head against the cool glass. And suddenly, absurdly, I remembered that I still owed the bridal boutique the final alteration fee. I almost laughed. The marriage was gone. But apparently, the dress still had a balance due. The apartment door still had the same stubborn lock I had complained about for a year. You had to turn the key twice, pull the door towards you, then turn it another half-inch before the deadbolt released. I stood in the hallway in my wedding dress and did the little routine automatically. Turn. Pull. Turn. The door opened. A cardboard box nearly tripped me as I stepped inside. It was the entryway organizer I had ordered 2 days earlier, still sealed with packing tape. The apartment looked exactly as it had that morning. 2 blankets were piled on the couch. A coffee mug sat on the side table. Half a sleeve of crackers had been left open and gone soft. The curtains were drawn, so the room was dim even though it was still afternoon. I changed into slippers. Then I went to the kitchen. My mother had sent me home with a container of rice porridge and shredded chicken the night before the wedding because she did not trust me to remember to eat. I had warmed some that morning before going to the hotel. The rest was still in the refrigerator. I spooned a bowlful into a dish and sat at the table without heating it. Cold rice. Soft chicken. Almost no flavor. I ate every bite. When I finished, I rinsed the bowl and left it in the sink. The running water sounded unusually loud in the quiet apartment. I turned on my phone. Notifications flooded the screen so quickly that for a moment I could not read any of them. 23 missed calls from Daniel. 47 messages. 4 from his mother. 12 from Megan. 9 from Lauren. The college group chat I shared with old friends had more than 90 unread messages. I opened none of Daniel's. I texted my mother first. Home. Ate something. Her reply came almost immediately. Good. Don't eat the rest tomorrow. I'll bring fresh food. I typed, okay. Then I opened Megan's messages. They were a mixture of text, voice notes, angry emojis, and several sentences written entirely in capital letters. The central point was simple. Where are you? Are you alone? Do you want me there? I will come right now. I replied, I'm home. I'm okay. I want to be alone tonight. The typing bubble appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Finally she sent one word. Okay. Lauren had written something similar, but shorter. Doors locked? Call me if he shows up. I replied, locked. Then I saw a message from Daniel's mother, Patricia. Emily, what happened today was terrible. Daniel knows he made a mistake. Please don't make any decisions while everyone is emotional. Come back and talk when you're ready. I stared at the phrase made a mistake. As if he had ordered the wrong flowers. 3 months earlier, Patricia had asked me for $50,000. She had called it a temporary family cash flow problem involving a property tax bill and a business loan. Daniel had been embarrassed. I had transferred the money because I believed I was helping the family I was about to join. She had thanked me once. The subject had never come up again. I closed her conversation. A text from an unfamiliar number waited below it. Hello, Emily. This is Claire Bennett. I sat very still. The message continued for several screens. She said she had not known what Daniel planned to say at the wedding. She apologized for being there, though she explained that her father had received a call from one of Daniel's old classmates after Daniel began the ceremony. Walter had insisted they drive to the hotel. She said she had ended contact with Daniel years ago. She said the night Daniel romanticized was not a romantic memory for her. She had been intoxicated, confused, and trying for years afterward not to think about it. She said she had told him repeatedly that she did not want a relationship and did not want him contacting her. Every year on her birthday, he still sent a message. She never answered. She believed silence had finally worked. Then came the sentence that made me stop scrolling. I thought he had moved on because he was marrying you. Below that. I am sorry he used my name to hurt you. You do not need to respond to me. I just needed you to know I did not ask for any of this. And then, on a line by itself. I'm sorry. I put the phone face down on the table. For the first time since leaving the hotel, I let myself think about Claire as a person instead of a name. For years, Daniel had spoken about his past indirectly. A meaningful relationship in college. A difficult ending. Someone who had shaped him. He never said Claire's name to me until he said it into a microphone at our wedding. I had interpreted that vagueness as discretion. Now it looked different. Maybe Claire had spent years afraid not that Daniel would attack her or threaten her, but that he would continue doing exactly what he had done, keeping her alive in his private mythology, sending messages, preserving memories she did not share, treating her distance as evidence of tragedy instead of rejection. There was something suffocating about being loved by someone you did not love back when that person refused to accept the difference. Hatred at least recognized you as separate. Obsession could turn you into a character in someone else's story. I showered. Hot water ran over my shoulders until the stiffness in my neck eased. I washed hairspray from my scalp, makeup from my face, and the faint perfume I had chosen because Daniel once said it smelled like our first date. That detail made me stop for a second. Then I rinsed again. When I came out, I put on an old college t-shirt and gray pajama pants. I wrapped my wet hair in a towel, dragged the unopened box from the entryway into the living room, and cut through the tape. Inside was a narrow wooden organizer with hooks for keys, 2 shelves, and a small drawer. The instruction booklet was badly translated and printed in 6 languages. I spread the hardware across the rug. Screw A into panel C. Attach bracket. Tighten bolt. Repeat. It was exactly the kind of task I needed. A screw either fit or it did not. A shelf was either level or it was not. Nothing about furniture assembly required emotional interpretation. Halfway through, I realized one side panel was backward. I took it apart and started again. The doorbell rang. I froze with the screwdriver in my hand. The bell rang a second time. I went to the peephole. Daniel stood in the hallway. He was still wearing his navy wedding suit. The tie hung loose around his neck. His hair, carefully styled that morning, was plastered to his forehead. The rain had started. Water darkened his shoulders and collar. He looked as if he had walked several blocks through it. He lifted his face toward the peephole. He could not see me clearly, but he knew I was there. Emily. His voice came through the door, muffled. I leaned against the wall beside the frame. Please let me in. We need to talk. I looked at the screwdriver in my hand. A smear of machine oil from the hardware packet coated my thumb. Emily. He said my name again, softer. What Walter said isn't the whole story. That night, Claire and I dash. He stopped. The silence lasted several seconds. Maybe he finally heard himself. Maybe he understood that even if he could prove some private version of that old night, it would not explain what he had done to me in front of 200 people. It would not explain why he had chosen our wedding to honor another woman. It would not explain why he had used Claire's name without permission. It would not explain why honesty had somehow waited until I was already dressed, photographed, seated in front of our families, and standing beside a ring tray. I returned to the living room and tightened another screw. The doorbell rang again. Then again. On the 4th ring, I stood and walked back to the door. I did not open it. I placed my palm against the wood. For a moment, I heard only Rain and Daniel breathing on the other side. Then there was a soft thump. He had leaned against the door too. Less than 2 inches of wood separated us. Emily, he said. At the wedding, what did you say to me? I closed my eyes. He had heard the words. He simply wanted me to explain them. That was Daniel's habit. He could hear a sentence perfectly and still believe it was someone else's responsibility to make him understand. I said nothing. At the altar, I had leaned close and whispered one thing. You still don't understand what you did wrong. Do you have any idea how pathetic that is? He stood outside for a long time. Eventually, his weight left the door. Footsteps moved down the hall. 1 flight of stairs. Then another. I waited until I could no longer hear them. Outside, the rain grew heavier, striking the windows in fast, uneven bursts. I went back to the floor and finished the organizer. When the last screw was tight, I stood it beside the door and placed my keys on the top shelf. I added a small ceramic bowl for loose change. Then I took 2 steps back. It was straight. Solid. For some reason, that mattered. I went into the bedroom and opened the lower closet drawer. The wedding dress was there inside its garment bag. Megan had arranged for one of the hotel staff to bring it down after I changed into the coat Lauren gave me, and Lauren had dropped it at my apartment while I was still in the car. I pulled it out and spread it across the bed. The train covered almost the entire mattress. The fabric was still white. That felt unfair. Something that had been present for the destruction of a day should have looked damaged afterward. A rip. A stain. A broken zipper. Anything. Instead, it was pristine. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at it. Months earlier, I had tried on 12 dresses. Daniel never saw this one. I had wanted the first look to matter. The dress had cost more than my first used car. My mother had argued with me about it for 2 days, then quietly paid for the veil. Megan had cried when I walked out of the fitting room. Lauren had said, "That's the one," before I even reached the mirror. Now it was just fabric. I folded it as carefully as I could, put it into a storage box, and pushed the box onto the lowest shelf of the hall closet. When I closed the door, my phone began ringing in the living room. Not a normal call. A video call. The number was unfamiliar, but I recognized the last 4 digits. Megan had texted me a photograph of Walter Bennett's business card after the wedding and said, "You may need this later." I answered. The image shook before settling on a young man in his 20s. Behind him was a living room filled with heavy traditional furniture, framed architectural sketches, and family photographs. "Is this Emily Carter?" "Yes. I'm Noah Bennett. Claire's brother." His voice sounded strained. "My sister." He turned the phone. Claire sat on a couch with both hands covering her face. Her shoulders trembled. An open first aid kit and several prescription bottles sat on the coffee table, though I could not see labels. Walter's voice came from somewhere off camera. "Let her speak to Emily. She owes her an apology." Claire flinched. Noah turned the camera back toward himself. "My dad's been yelling since we got home," he said quietly. "He keeps saying the family name is ruined, that Claire should have told him everything years ago, that none of this would have happened if she'd handled it differently." His jaw tightened. "She took sleeping medication. More than she was supposed to. I called for medical advice, and we're getting her checked, but Dad won't stop." My grip tightened around the phone. From the background came Claire's voice. "Dad, please. Just stop. I'll apologize to Emily." "I will." Walter answered immediately. "An apology doesn't erase what people heard today. It doesn't give you your reputation back." Something cold moved through me. I had been humiliated at my own wedding. Claire had been publicly exposed by a man who claimed to love her. And now her father was punishing her for being exposed. Different men. Different reasons. Same result. Claire had become responsible for everyone else's shame. I looked at her through the screen. She was not a villain in my life. She was not even really part of my life. She was a person trapped in the center of consequences created by other people's choices. Daniel had carried one night from college like a holy relic for more than a decade. Walter carried family reputation like a weapon. And Claire had apparently spent years trying to become small enough that neither man would make her the center of a story again. I ended the call after telling Noah to focus on getting her medical care and not on explaining anything to me. Only after the screen went dark did I realize I was standing. The television remote was in my other hand. I had been squeezing it so tightly that the edges hurt my palm. Rain hammered the windows. I crossed the room and opened the curtains. One street light below had burned out. The pavement shone black under the remaining lamps. Water streamed along the curb. No one was outside. My phone buzzed. Megan had sent a screenshot. Her message said, "You need to see what Mark posted." I opened it. Mark had put a photograph from the wedding on his social media page. Daniel stood alone on the stage under bright lights, one hand hanging at his side. The caption read, "Today's disaster recap, local attorney publicly confesses old hookup at his own wedding, names the woman, then gets confronted by her father in front of 200 people. Groom currently experiencing consequences at historic levels." Hundreds of reactions had already appeared. The comments were worse. One person wrote, "Isn't publicly identifying a former partner while discussing sexual details a privacy issue?" Another, "Imagine hiring this guy to protect confidential information." A third account belonged to another local attorney. It simply said, "Career-limiting decision." I stared at the screen, then tossed the phone onto the couch. In the kitchen, I poured a glass of water. When I came back, I noticed a folded sheet of paper on top of the new entryway organizer. The ceremony schedule. Lauren must have put it there when she dropped off the dress. I unfolded it. Beside special message from the groom, someone had written 3 words in blue ink. "What an idiot." Megan's handwriting. I folded the page again and put it into the organizer's little drawer. Inside the drawer was also the engagement photo album I had moved out of the living room the week before. On the cover, Daniel and I stood beneath golden leaves in German village. His arm was around me. Sunlight filtered through the branches. I did not open it. I closed the drawer. Then I drank my water. When the glass was empty, I picked up my phone and posted one message to my own page. No photograph. No explanation. Just this. The wedding did not happen today. I'm sorry to everyone who traveled, rearranged plans, or brought gifts. I'll reach out about returning everything once I get organized. Thank you for giving me some space tonight. Emily. I turned off the lights and curled into one corner of the couch with a blanket. The rain stopped sometime after midnight. Megan sent another message. People are sharing the full video now. Someone filmed Walter's whole confrontation. Then another. Daniel's mom sent a voice note to their family group saying she couldn't believe she'd raised a son who would do this. She deleted it, but somebody saved it. I stared at the 2 messages. Then typed, "Oh." Megan replied instantly. "Oh? That's all you have?" I did not answer. I pulled the blanket to my chin and looked through the window at a thin piece of moon emerging behind the clouds. For one strange second, it reminded me of the moment just before I removed my veil. The world had looked the same then too. That was the unsettling thing about disaster. The sky did not change for it. The next morning, my phone woke me before my alarm. It vibrated across the glass coffee table in short, angry bursts. I opened one eye and reached for it. 7 messages from Megan. 3 screenshots from Lauren. A missed call from my Aunt Carol. Megan's last message was a voice note. I played it. "Open the neighborhood group chat right now." "Actually, no, don't." Lauren sent me the video. "I'm sending it to you. Just, don't freak out." Her attempt not to sound delighted by Daniel's suffering was unsuccessful. I sat up. The blanket slid to the floor. Sunlight came through the narrow gap in the curtains and cut a bright line across the hardwood. The storm had passed. Outside, the sky was clear blue. Lauren had forwarded a video filmed outside Reed, Walsh and Mercer, the law firm where Daniel worked. The footage was shaky. Whoever recorded it had been standing across the street. Daniel came through the revolving doors wearing the same suit from the wedding. It was wrinkled now. His tie was gone. Dark stubble covered his jaw. Before he reached the curb, 2 people stepped in front of him. One had a camera. The other held a microphone with the logo of a local online news channel. "Mr. Reed, is it true you publicly discussed a former sexual partner during your wedding ceremony?" Daniel raised a hand toward the camera and kept walking. "Mr. Reed, the woman's father said she may not have been able to consent that night. Do you have a response?" Daniel's shoulders tightened. He opened the door of his car, got inside, and slammed it. For half a second before the video ended, the camera caught his face through the window. His eyes were dark with exhaustion. His lips were cracked. He looked like he had not slept. Lauren had added one sentence beneath the video. 3 local content pages are outside his firm. Apparently he hasn't met a client all morning. I put the phone down and went to wash my face. Cold water woke me faster than coffee. In the mirror, my hair looked like I had fought with a leaf blower. My eyes were slightly swollen, but otherwise I looked normal. That irritated me. Part of me expected heartbreak to leave a visible injury. Instead, I looked like someone who had slept badly. I made toast and reheated the last of my mother's rice porridge, even though she had specifically told me not to keep eating leftovers. Halfway through, I remembered her warning. I ate it anyway. My phone rang. "Aunt Carol." I considered letting it go to voicemail. Then I answered. "Emily. Honey, are you all right?" I barely slept. I keep thinking about that man standing up there talking like he was giving a closing argument. Who does that at his own wedding? Your uncle said lawyers always think they're the smartest people in the room, but this dash. "Aunt Carol." She stopped. "I'm okay." "Are you really?" "Yesterday I came home and built an entryway organizer." There was a long pause. "You built furniture?" "Yes." "In the wedding dress?" "Not the whole time." Another pause. I could almost hear her trying to decide whether I was emotionally stable or completely unhinged. Then, inevitably, her practical side took over. "What are you doing about the wedding money?" There it was. In our family, no crisis was too painful to prevent somebody from asking about finances. "I haven't decided yet." "Don't rush to give anything back to his family," she said immediately. "Not until you know what you've already paid. The hotel deposits, the photographer, the flowers, the guests who traveled. He caused this. You shouldn't be the one eating every cost." Her wording was more American than my mother's, but the instinct was universal. Protect what is yours before someone convinces you that being gracious requires becoming poorer. "I'll sort it out," I said. "And the house fund?" I went still. "What about it? Didn't you two set up that joint account for the down payment? Your mother mentioned it at Christmas." I looked toward my purse on the chair. "Yeah. Check everything before you sign anything." "I will." "Emily?" "Yeah?" Her voice softened. "You don't have to sound okay for me." That was the kindest thing she had said all morning. I looked down at my breakfast. "I know." After we hung up, I put my phone on silent and carried laundry to the small balcony. A few t-shirts and towels I had hung before the wedding were dry. I folded them one at a time. Below me, a man walked a golden retriever along the sidewalk. The dog stopped near a tree and refused to move. The owner tugged the leash and said something I could not hear. A delivery van double-parked. Someone across the courtyard played music too loudly for 10 in the morning. It was an aggressively normal day. The world had no respect for personal catastrophe. By noon, I had answered exactly 3 messages. One to my mother. One to Megan. One to the hotel coordinator, asking her to send me a final invoice and a list of items that could still be refunded. I did not answer Daniel. His messages had slowed after midnight. There were still several unread ones waiting. I could see the first lines without opening them. Please let me explain. I never meant to hurt you. I thought honesty was better than lying. Claire's father twisted what happened. I know the timing was wrong. The timing. As if the problem was that he had chosen the wrong hour for the right speech. At 3 that afternoon, I left the apartment to buy groceries. The neighborhood produce market was 2 blocks west, tucked between a pharmacy and a family-owned bakery. It had narrow aisles, handwritten signs, bins of vegetables, and a refrigerator case that always made a clicking sound. I had been shopping there for years. I picked up spinach, tomatoes, cucumbers, eggs, and chicken. Then I reached the herb section. Cilantro sat in damp green bundles beneath a small misting nozzle. I stopped. The clerk, a woman named Rosa who recognized me from weekly visits, looked up from stacking peppers. Cilantro today? No. She nodded as if this were exactly what she expected from me. I walked away. At the register, I changed my mind. I returned and picked up 1 bunch. Not because I suddenly liked it. Because I did not want a leaf to become a symbol in my life just because it had been present on the worst morning of it. I stood there checking the stems when someone said behind me, "Emily?" I turned. Mark Davis was holding a 6-pack of beer under one arm and a bag of salted peanuts in the other hand. His expression changed 3 times in less than a second. Surprise. Panic. An attempt at normal friendliness. "Hey," he said. "I didn't expect to see you. I live 2 blocks away." "Right. Obviously." He rubbed the back of his neck. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he pointed toward the herb bundle in my hand. "Making salsa?" "No." "Okay." Another silence. Mark was usually the loudest person in any room. Watching him run out of words was almost impressive. Finally he exhaled. "I should tell you something." I waited. Back in college, Daniel talked about Claire a lot. Especially when he drank. He called her the love of his life. Said that night with her was the bravest thing he'd ever done because he'd finally stopped being afraid of what he wanted. Mark's mouth tightened. We thought he was exaggerating. Honestly, we thought half of it was drunk guy nonsense. I told him more than once that if she wasn't answering him, he needed to leave her alone. Did he? Mark gave me a tired look. You already know the answer. I looked down at the cilantro. How do you tell if this is fresh? He blinked. What? Cilantro. You're asking me about cilantro? You cook more than I do. He stared at me for several seconds, then seemed to realize I was serious. He set the peanuts on a nearby display and examined the bunch. Bright leaves. Stems shouldn't be slimy. Smell it. If it smells strong, it's good. I held the bunch toward him. This one? Yeah. That's fine. I put it in my basket. Mark watched me. Emily, you are. What? He shook his head. Nothing. That's twice people have done that to me in 24 hours. Maybe because nobody knows what to say. That's allowed. He gave a small laugh. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I should have told you Daniel was still weird about Claire. Would I have believed you? He considered it. Probably not. Then don't rewrite yourself into the hero now. He winced. Fair. I paid for my groceries and left. About 30 feet down the sidewalk, I heard Mark answer his phone behind me. He lowered his voice, but the wind carried part of the conversation. Yeah, I just ran into her. No, she looks fine. That's the scary part. I think Daniel's done. Not because she hates him. Because I don't think she cares enough to hate him anymore. I kept walking. The grocery bag handles pressed red lines into my fingers. Sunlight came through the trees in broken pieces across the sidewalk. At my building, Mr. Harris, the retired teacher who volunteered at the front desk 3 afternoons a week, waved me over. "Package for you, Miss Carter." The return address belonged to Sweet Laurel, the small bakery Lauren owned with her sister. I opened the box in the lobby. Inside were butter cookies dusted with sugar. A note sat on top. "Fix your lipstick. Eat a cookie. Then survive the next 5 minutes." That was all. I stood there holding the note longer than I expected. Then I took a cookie. It broke softly between my teeth. Butter, vanilla, a little salt. Mr. Harris leaned over the desk. "Those smell illegal." I handed him one. He bit into it and closed his eyes. "Where'd you buy these?" "Friend made them." "Tell your friend she has a customer. She already has a bakery. Then tell her she has another one." For the first time since the wedding, I laughed without forcing it. Upstairs, I put the groceries away and set the cookies on the coffee table. I ate a second one. Then I remembered the bank card. Daniel had given it to me the night before the wedding. "Our house account," he had said. "Everything's finally in one place. Password is your birthday." We had been saving for a down payment on a townhouse. Some of the money was mine. Some was his. Some had come from family contributions and wedding savings. I had not checked the balance in weeks because Daniel, being a lawyer and a person who loved spreadsheets, had handled most of the transfers. The card was still in a zippered pocket of my purse. I took it out. My stomach tightened for the first time all day. I opened the banking app and signed in. Balance, $0. I stared at the screen. Closed the app. Opened it again. $0. I pulled up the transaction history. There it was. The previous evening, at 6:03 p.m., one transfer had emptied the account. $120,000. Sent to an account I did not recognize. At 6:03 p.m. yesterday, I had been standing under chandeliers in a wedding dress while Daniel told a ballroom full of people that I could leave if I had a problem with his past. At 6:03 p.m., someone had moved $120,000 out of the account we were supposed to use for our future home. I took a screenshot. Then another showing the destination account number. I emailed both to myself. Only after that did I realize my hands were shaking. Not at the wedding. Not while Daniel stood outside my door. Now. Because humiliation was painful. Money disappearing was concrete. It could be traced. It could be proven. And unlike Daniel's speech, it did not depend on anybody's interpretation of love. My phone rang. Patricia Reed. Daniel's mother. I answered. "Emily, sweetheart, it's Mom Dash." She stopped herself. "I'm sorry. Patricia. I mean, you know what I mean." "I do." She cleared her throat. "Daniel behaved terribly yesterday. I've already told him that. He knows he hurt you. I was hoping maybe, after things calm down, the two of you could sit together privately and talk before you make anything permanent. 3 years is a long time to throw away over one awful day." I looked at the banking screen. One awful day. Patricia. Yes? The joint account Daniel and I were using for the house had $120,000 in it. Silence. I continued. At 6:03 yesterday evening, the full amount was transferred out to an account I don't recognize. The silence changed. It was no longer confusion. It was recognition. I sat down slowly on the edge of the couch. "Do you know where that money went?" Patricia did not answer.